What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at the St. Vitus basement. We are here with Shawn of Child Bite. Thank you so much for your time today, man.
Definitely. Thank you for having me.
Of course. It's so awesome to have you here. Your new record's scheduled to come out in about a week, Blow Off the Omens, you said.
Yep.
Is this intended to be like just a continuation of Negative Noise, or do you think that this record is like a new start or stands out a little bit more in the Child Bite catalog?
Kind of half and half. It's not like a crazy change by any means, but that said, half of the band are different people, so there's some different creative input going into it, and I think we've just overall been slowly refining what we're going for, maybe like finding ourselves or whatever, figuring out like what we like to do and whatever. And so this one, it's I think people that like that one, it's not gonna like throw you for a loop, but but I think it's a little more. The ship is a little more refined, and I don't know.
You mentioned that you have like new members contributing to this. I'd imagine that they brought some newer elements to Child Bite as well, right?
Yeah, and really, it's like drummer-wise, we have a buddy that filled in. Basically, we haven't had a full-time drummer in a couple years, and we've been not really. We were sort of looking, but then we were just like, let's keep this, so there's just three of us. We can just make any decisions we want. We can go out whenever we want, and we'll just find. We have a whole bunch of talented buddies that just are in too many bands or have too many other obligations, So we're like, we'll book a tour, and then we're like, all right, let's find who's going to play with us. So we were kind of waiting to do a record until we found Mr. or Mrs. or Ms. Right, and then after a while, we're like, fuck it, let's just write a record, and we'll pick one of our buddies to do it, and that's what we did. So, but it is a new guitar player, Jeremy, who's been in the band about 2 years, and so it was interesting to see. He'd been in the band just playing our previous material, and so then it was finally like, all right, let's see what you got, buddy.
Yeah. Well, I always thought that Child Bite's music is on the little more experimental side. You have like elements of hardcore and like noise rock and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine that like Child Bite doesn't really like to repeat themselves too much, right? You try to take a new approach to everything you do, right?
Yeah. I think we would get a little antsy if things were feeling repetitive. But by the same token, we're trying to have our sound, figure out whatever that is, even though it is a mix of different things. So I think it's it was cool. His writing just fit right in. It was great. It was super easy. And yeah, we just kind of all through. Like, I don't play guitar live with the band anymore, but when we're writing, I throw on a guitar and we'll just get the ideas flowing, and came together really quick. We did it in like 3 months, wrote everything, and then went in and recorded the record in 3 days. And I think that it would be a difference between previous stuff and this one. There was a lot more just trusting our gut and not overthinking things, not like running things through like, oh, we have to try it 100 different ways and find, it's like kind of like that feels really good. Let's just do it that way.
So it seems like the making of Blow Off the Omens was fairly organic, right? And like maybe improvised. You didn't like have like a preconceived idea of what you were working on.
Yeah, no, just kind of thought we'd see what comes out of us, of our fingers.
And I'd imagine, because you've played with like fairly different bands. Like, I wasn't sure if it was a show or a tour, but I know that you did some shows with Phil Anselmo and the Illegals.
Yeah.
And then you're on this tour right now with Black Tusk. I would say that there's some differences there. So I'd imagine that like maybe you could have the ability to sort of like adjust your set depending on like the tours or shows that you're playing.
We totally could. Yeah, that's kind of the double-edged sword of being like quote unquote different, is where you don't fit in anywhere. / you can fit in everywhere. So in general, it's been a pro and not a con for us, because we'll go out with like hardcore bands, we'll go out with metal bands, noise rock bands, and tends to just kind of translate no matter what.
Is the reaction or vibe a little bit different depending on like the type of tour that you're on?
Yeah, I think so. But in general, I think by the end of the set, we, for the most part, win people over.
You make them yours.
Yeah. I think there might be a little head scratching right at the beginning, and they're just trying to like, is this cool, or do I like this or not? And I think usually by the time we get through everything, the energy, the volume, all that stuff kind of just like fits in with whatever genre, transcends like genre limitations or whatever.
Yeah. Do you try to execute the material live exactly how people are hearing it on the album, or being that your music is so organic and thrives on like crowd participation and a stage presence, that maybe you kind of like flexible? It's a little bit flexible to kind of like maybe mess around a little bit on stage.
There's some flexibility, but it's all kind of it's like planned flexibility. It's like, all right, when we're doing this part, drummer, we're going to wait until you do that fill, and that's going to be what takes us to the next part. So if you want to play it for the previous part for 5 seconds, that's cool. If you want to play it for 5 minutes, that's cool too. So there's certain stuff where we know who is going to cue the next thing, so that gives us a little leeway.
Oh.
But in general, it kind of, the way we record it in the studio is like, besides vocals, it was drums, guitar, and bass. And then we were doing this latest one was on tape, so we were trying to like minimal like editing kind of stuff because it's just more of a process.
Yeah.
So we just we just made a point to like before going to record, get the songs as tight as possible. So when we go in, it's just executing. It's like first or second take, and then we can go back and throw vocals and overdubs on top. So it was pretty much like a live recording thing. So it felt pretty similar to how we would do it on stage.
There you go. When it comes to lyrics, is there a meaning that you kind of like try to engage the listeners in, or can lyrics or the meaning of the music be open to interpretation?
Yeah, on the latest stuff, there's typically some sort of message or some sort of idea behind it, something that's whatever compelling thought that I've got that I'm dealing with, that I think other people could relate to. But I definitely have a problem with, I don't want to write lyrics that just sound like. Of course, nobody wants to write lyrics that sound like generic or just like, dude, there are 1,000 bands out there that have a song that uses these same phrases. Right? I was like, so I always try to find a creative new way to say things that people, that are kind of universal and that most likely have been talked about in some way or another. So I think because of that, it makes them slightly more mysterious and maybe a little more open to interpretation. Yeah. So even though I know what it means, maybe it means the same thing to somebody, or maybe somebody else reads the lyrics and it applies to their life in a totally different way, and that's really cool,
There you go. And I'd imagine, do you need to hear the music in order to come up with a lyrical idea at all, or do you sometimes have something written in mind, maybe that can help determine the music itself?
The music doesn't necessarily come up with the lyric concept or what I'm going to sing about, but I'll just have my whatever ideas. I'm thinking about writing a song about this, and I'll start to just get some rough ideas laid out, and then musically that'll help me define how long each line can be, or number of syllables or that kind of thing. Sometimes it's taking I got an idea to write about this. Here's a song. Let me see if it's a good fit or not, and maybe I make it fit. And sometimes that's cool too. Sometimes trying to take the square peg and stick it in the round hole forces you to do something different with it that wouldn't have come naturally otherwise. It's kind of like an interesting hurdle that helps it become something different. I don't know. Yeah.
There you go. And I have 2 more questions for you.
Sure.
Hardest question, and my favorite question to ask everybody. How do you know when a song is done?
Yeah. We kind of...
And please don't say when you get the final mix back.
Oh, man. And you're like... No. One thing that we do almost always is we will book our recording time before we've written anything. And we just kind of plot it out. Like this one, we were talking about, we should record a record next year. This is rewind a year ago. And we're, maybe it's fall time. So we decided on recording with Steve Albini at his studio in Chicago. And I just hit them up and I just looked at it. I was looked at maybe 6 or 7 months out. And I was like, hey, what do you have in April? And we just blocked out some time. And that was it. So then lights a fire under your ass. It gives you that limitation.
There
So
you go.
I think that helps
Pressure's always a good,
to have
like,
pressure.
medium.
Yeah. And it wasn't too much. It's not like I said, all right, hey guys, I booked it next week.
Yeah.
Write some songs real quick. You know, it wasn't unrealistic. It was totally like, we can write an album in this amount of time.
Yeah.
It just forces us to actually get it moving instead of like, oh, let's write the album and then when we're ready we'll record it. It probably would have been like a year or something, you know, because we would have taken it easy and all that. So
That's a good idea.
so I
Wow.
know that's so we do that a lot. That helps. And I think this one too, on this record, more so than any other record, we, like I was saying, we didn't like really overanalyze them as much. It was kind of just like, you know, this doesn't have to be, you know, a lot of times birthing some sort of creative project, the tortured artist, it feels like it's not fully formed unless it hurt. And I think this time we're like, you know, let's follow our instincts a little bit, and if it's feeling good, let's let it go. If it's not feeling good, we'll keep on working on it.
You should totally mess with the rest of your bandmates and just book like a recording session like tomorrow just to see what they can crank out in like 24 hours.
Dude, I did something like that not too long ago, and to mixed responses from the band, some enthusiasm, some frustration, just for like a song. But it really was, and it was a cover song, so it wasn't that crazy. But we still, even when we're recording covers, we feel like we need to do something to it, because otherwise it's just like, you might as well not have done it because it sounds the same as the thing that already exists. So it was kind of like, hey guys, I hit up the studio. He's got time tomorrow morning. We can go in. And nobody even learned how to play the parts yet. And a couple of the guys were like, hell yeah, this will be a fun challenge, and we'll see. And then one guy was not as happy about it, but it did work out in the end. So yeah, maybe I'll do it again.
There you go. Do it for like a double album.
Oh God, I don't know. I don't know if that would work out. but if it doesn't work out, I'm gonna blame you, and then it's not my fault.
Okay,
And,
there you go. You heard it here. So hate me, not him. And the final question, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys are originally from Detroit, right?
Yeah. Originally and still there. Yeah.
Awesome. So I actually interviewed Walls of Jericho last year.
Oh, that's cool.
You know, was from the hardcore scene there. And, like, I'd imagine that, like, I heard that there's a really happening hardcore scene in Michigan and Detroit. Is there still a current active metal scene there? Or was Child Bite's goal to, like, kind of get outside your state line in order to get the name out there more?
Yeah, well, and also it's like, we're kind of sort of fit into a couple scenes back home because of the way the music is. But really, we owe the Detroit hardcore scene for how we sound now, because when we started, we were more of a kind of like a weirdo, spazzy indie punk kind of thing. Like I was playing synthesizer and
Like Depeche Mode?
And more like Devo, and Devo meets Deerhoof meets Dead Kennedys meets some other D name bands, and my voice was like 2 octaves higher, like yelping and shit, and then we got asked to play a record release show for a rad like metal hardcore band in Detroit called Hellmouth, which was a singer from Suicide Machines, who was more like a ska punk band, but this was like his like kind of hardcore metal band, and some members of another rad band called Temple of Void, and whatever. They asked us to play their show, and we were like, oh man, we want to do this. We're buddies with them, but we're like, we're gonna get eaten alive because it's gonna be like metal hardcore, and then like our weird bullshit, and then more metal hardcore, you know. So we're and this is like 10 years ago, and so we were like, and I thought a good olive branch, even though people are going to be scratching their heads and not knowing what to make of us, I was like, let's throw in a Black Flag cover, because that if they don't, respect that, or at least see that as like a meeting of the minds, then fuck them. But and we did it, and we had a huge pit, and it was great, and we recorded that cover, and ever since then we started going further and further down that kind of path, and getting heavier and harder sounding. So so I don't know, I don't remember what your original question was, but the thriving hardcore scene, and there's a lot of great metal bands, hardcore bands in Detroit, and Yeah, no, I've always been super proud of the Detroit scene, and always happy that like when bands come to our town, they're like blown away by the locals. You know, because you don't get that everywhere you go.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that here. Like, you get so many great local bands, and you know, people. That's how people get involved in City Underground. They go to like a big show, and then there's like a local band opening, and then people are like, "Oh wow, I wonder how many more like this." And then they go to like Lucky 13 or like a smaller venue like this, and then they become baptized in the local scene.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Is there just anything else you would like to promote for Child Bite? The new record gets coming out in like a week, so.
Yeah, the new record, it's called Blow Off the Omens, comes out November 22nd on Housecore Records, which is our buddy Phil Anselmo's label, and that's why we toured with him a bit. And we're super stoked about it, man. Recorded with Steve Albini. We got Chewy from Voivod, the guitar player, wrote and recorded a solo that's on it.
Wow.
Which is a fucking honor. And so we're really proud of it. And so that's coming out. And then I think next year, we don't have too much planned yet, but the idea is just to support the record, go out, try and hit the road as much as possible.
Awesome. Well, we hope you come back here.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Shawn.
Awesome.
Everybody, Shawn of Child Bite, Blow Off the Omens, out on Housecore Records November 22nd. Be sure to pick that up when supplies officially lasts forever. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We'll see you next time.